The biggest myth, Nephilim, a tale of giants and their heights. We are going to find the biggest myth, and by biggest we mean tallest. History is filled with examples, and what follows comes from ancient texts. Greek and Roman mythology mentions the Titans, Cyclops, and several other giants. Norse mythology contains stories of the frost giants of Jötunheim. Egyptians and Sumerians all carved giants next to normal-sized people. In America, Buffalo Bill Cody wrote the following words about a legend recounted to him by members of the Sioux tribe.
It was taught by the wise men of this tribe that the earth was originally populated by giants, who were fully 3 times the size of modern men.
North American legends of Bigfoot place them at 7 to 10 feet tall. Before we get into the written accounts, I think logic would say, a 5'6" individual might really feel like a grasshopper compared to someone who is 7 to 8 feet tall. Numbers 13:33 states that, and there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. How tall is a Nephilim if we take the verse from Numbers? The height of an adult grasshopper can range ½ an inch to 2½ inches, depending on the species. If we used a 2-inch grasshopper, and the average height man at 5 feet 8 inches, that would make a giant 34 times taller than us, or 192 feet tall. In Deuteronomy 3 verse 11, it talks a huge bed for a giant king, Og of Bashan. Behold, his bed was a bed of iron. 9 cubits was its length, and 4 cubits its breadth, according to the common cubit. 9 cubits would be 13.5 feet long, so if it were for a giant, they would have been 12 or 13 feet tall, but a large bed could have been a show of power. 1 Samuel 17 verses 4 to 7, the story of Goliath is told, Goliath, from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span, which would make him 9 feet tall. 1 Chronicles 11 verse 23, and he killed an Egyptian, a man of great height, 5 cubits tall, which would make him 7½ feet tall. A later text entitled The Craft of the Scribe, written in 1250 BC, discusses a Canaanite mountain pass during a past battle. At 20.65 inches per Egyptian cubit, the Sioux mentioned in this letter would have measured between 6 feet 10 inches and 8 feet 7 inches. Long before the rise of civilization, a race of beings known as the Nephilim walked the earth. These colossal creatures, often referred to as giants, were the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men in the ancient texts of the Bible and the Book of Enoch. So how tall were they? Well, 3,000 ells. In the book of Genesis, the Nephilim are described as being mighty men of old, men of renown. Their size and strength were legendary, and they were said to have been the rulers of the earth before the great flood. When we go to the Book of Enoch, which is not included in the Bible, it has this verse, in chapter 11, verse 2. And they became pregnant, the human women, and they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells. So, what is 3,000 ells in feet? Let's figure out an ell. The ell was an ancient measure of length mostly used for measuring cloth. It came from the Latin for arm ulna, and was assumed to be the average length of a person's arm. In 1661, Scotland standardized the ell to 37 inches. At the same time, the English ell was 45 inches, but was never standardized. However, ell was probably originally understood as a cubit, the combined length of the forearm and extended hand. An ancient cubit to the Hebrews was roughly 18 inches. So we have 3 numbers, 18, 37 and 45 inches. What is that when multiplied by 3,000 ells? Well, 4,333 feet, 9,250 feet and 11,250 feet. One obvious problem would be, giants would be so tall, no flood would have killed them. Noah's flood was commanded by God to kill the Nephilim and evil men. So, all of that seems crazy. What other evidence is out there to determine their height? Well, it turns out the ancient translation is wrong. 3,000 ells is not an error of English translation. It began with an ancient copyist's mistake, which changed a verse about the 3 races of watcher offspring. One of those races was called Eliud, into a comment about the giant's height. Eliud became ells, and 3 became 3,000. Well, turns out the 3,000 ells was a mistranslation in ancient times. We actually have no idea how tall Nephilim were. In conclusion, the Nephilim and other giants of history and mythology have captured the imagination of people for centuries. Their incredible size and strength have made them a staple of folklore and legend, and their stories continue to be told and retold to this day. While the truth behind these tales may never be known, the legacy of the giants lives on in the collective memory of humanity.